You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. Kyle Jamison. He is a 3D generalist based in the Baltimore, Maryland area. Now, he works full-time at Tate Inc, where he juggles multiple projects along with various freelance gigs that he picks up too. But his expertise in the Adobe Creative Suite, along with other 3D software like Houdini and Blender and all sorts of stuff, it make him the perfect person to converse with at the crossroads of creativity and technology. But tonight, we will get into that and more, along with some of the other things that, well, we creative folk always struggle with, no matter where our specialty lies. But Kyle is also an Adobe Community Expert and an official Adobe mentor. So we are privileged to have him as part of the show. So Kyle, welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Justin. Making me blush over here with that introduction.
Well, don't worry, we can't see you, so this is great. But host disclosure here. And I mentioned this to you, during our pre-discussion, but I'm not as familiar with the 3D realm as you are. So please forgive my lack of 3D knowledge of proper terms and concepts, like the term you use to identify yourself, which is a 3D generalist. Now, I've never heard of that term before. So what exactly is a 3D generalist?
To me, the generalist area definitely is the fun more, I would say, at my current role, where like certain 3D tasks can be demanded of me and my capabilities need to be a general range. So that can imply 3D modeling, importing a 3D object from a vendor, optimizing the geometry. So I would say that, I guess, alludes more to like the technical aspects of it, and it's a little more constrained where the designer and artist area, I think there's an interesting definition. And I would also say too, I think some of these job listings too are kind of always evolving, because I think the technology with 3D is always evolving at a rapid pace as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering about that, right? Because we see 3D artist, 3D designer, now 3D generalist. So, but what type is more in line with your career aspirations?
Well, at my current career, I think I'm in a good position where an example of a 3D job would be importing a 3D model. Where I work at is Tate, and they manufacture. A good analogy is like they are not only the manufacturers of Honda vehicles, but they're also the sellers of it. It's not a vehicle, but it's more of the case where we have engineers that design sealing infrastructure for data centers that hold a bunch of wires and lends itself to just that area, as well as we do raised flooring, a completely new industry that I never thought would actually demand so much 3D work, but it surprisingly does. And the work comes from people like the CEO, occasionally, some of the sales reps, the marketing department, of course. So, and even some of the engineers I have to talk to grab some of the models. So I think that it's such an interesting range, and it kind of challenges me in different ways that I thought wouldn't really be presented. Like some of the sales reps might be quote unquote your art director for a 3D video they need for a PowerPoint presentation, which can kind of be an interesting thing to juggle. But in terms of the aspirations part, the aspiration is more of that 3D artist role, which I think lends itself to making motion graphics for products. And yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, because when I'm looking at your LinkedIn, I see you were a media and communication major, right?
Yes, and honestly, college for me was definitely a struggle. Like I started at UMBC which is in Baltimore, and I was majoring in economics for about probably the first year or so, and then I scrapped that and tried this thing called an INDS major, which is basically like an independent study, make your own major type of major. Um, and I got to the cutoff point where you had to propose like this kind of not like a thesis, but like an argument for what your major should be. And I think at the time I was trying to do like a music industry major. Um, and to quick end of that story is I basically got denied the proposition, so I had to choose a particular major to graduate on time. So I ended up choosing media and communications.
How did you go from that to this? Like what drew you into this?
Media and communications, man, I'd say it's like 25% graphic design. So like you did have some courses where you got a Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. You got familiar with some of the Adobe suite products. But actually my 3D software interests, as well as I think my music software interests peaked at high school for me. So I think at 15 years old, maybe 16, I downloaded Blender, which is a free open source software. That was my first software, and I basically always had an interest, but it never really accelerated until college. And I was actually following a channel. His name is Midge Mantisa or something like that. And he basically does kind of like abstract sci-fi 3D stuff, and he does stuff for music videos. Like I think he worked with the band Korn recently. But anyways, he did about an hour and a half to like 2 hour streams, and I would just watch that and try to make my own projects based on that. And then from there, I kind of got into more tutorial channels and et cetera, and started doing some modeling, renders, and I built a portfolio with that to then get some freelance jobs that then landed me my full-time job. Because my Tate job, there's no way I freelance 3D work. Because actually in the past 3 to 4 years, I basically worked at Compulse Integrated Marketing and did some like web design, kind of more traditional, just a marketing firm for websites and email marketing. I got laid off from that. And in the probably a year to two, I landed some freelance jobs and they were 3D focused. And that then got me, well, when I got to my Tate interview, I had one interview and then they wanted a second interview with like a PowerPoint presentation where like I presented to the CEO as well as the whole market my 3D portfolio, which consisted of personal work as well as freelance work.
What advice do you have for individuals navigating these early stages of a 3D design career? Because maybe they're like you, maybe they're in college and they're, kind of interested in this, but not sure where to go. What advice do you have for them?
That's the $1 million question. I would say, so for my current full-time job, right? Getting into that Midge, here, I'm posting his YouTube channel in the chat. So there's like a little more context or visual context rather. Interesting technical stuff. But it's abstract like art. And although it's amazing, it looks cool. It could be in like a movie, a show, something like that, like VFX-y. It doesn't translate to a place that I work at. Like, it looks cool. They're trying to sell data center parts to like Microsoft and Google and Amazon and like whatever big tech company you could think of that as like buying tons of data center parts, So that 3D realm, when you present it to them, I think needs to consist more of like product renderings and more practical things because I think in the 3D world, it's the sexy looks of really cool motion graphics studios, right? I think that that takes a lot of time to get to, and it kind of, in an interesting way, those studios I think are hired to like take abstractism and like apply it to a product a lot of the time. So I think that's my goal, is to like get somewhere like that. But for now, for like a kind of a stable job at a company that constantly needs 3D work, that needs, you know, still renders of their products, nice animations, like exploded view animations of like, let's say an iPhone, like in a commercial where like it completely pulled apart like piece by piece and then it comes together, you know, kind of technical looking stuff like that is kind of my bread and butter at my full-time job. So yeah, in my presentation at my interview, I had work that was from freelance, that was literally of an engineering part that they were trying, that this company called Imaginative that messaged me on Behance, and they were requesting 3D renders of this product, and and the CEO at the interview at Tate even said, "Hey, we have that product in our warehouse." And I'm like, wow, like so that was kind of where the practical product, you know, guys who are trying to sell things and make a product look at 3D and they're like, man, that's some powerful technology, because I now don't have to like take a nice picture. You know, 3D is almost in a way going to get rid of like photography of like food. Like, think of how much work it is for like a Burger King shot to like put all that food together, et cetera, et cetera. To me, I think that's where like the massive advantage of 3D comes in. You can do things with the product that you physically can't do. So yeah, sorry if I yet again went long-winded.
No, that's okay. Well, look, let's pull it back a little bit and let's talk about where you're working now at Tate, because it seems like there's different aspects of 3D design, and it sounds like what you do at Tate is more of like a non-sexy corporate 3D type of design. Is that
Yes,
okay? So, what kinds of clients do you work with at Tate?
it's an interesting role because I'm on the marketing team. Um, I have I have a manager, and then I have two other individuals that work for me. I'm the only 3D animation, renders, anything like that. So the pipeline kind of comes down to my manager needing marketing material from me, and that marketing material might be requested from sales reps, from the CEO, from project managers. Project managers meaning they're the ones working with someone like Microsoft, for example, that he wants to include a render of what it could look like in his presentation, or an animation actually. So one of the sales reps needed like a minute long render of a containment area where like you know, data racks are put in and they need to be in a data center. It's on the website. So yeah, I don't necessarily, that's kind of the answer to where the work comes from, or like who are the clients. Like my company makes money from, you know, regular buildings, from the raised floor industry, where that can be used in like airports, you know, just big buildings like skyscrapers, for example.
Well, when I'm on the featured case studies, I see, there's like the NFL Los Angeles, Boston Children's Hospital, American Eagle Outfitters.
Yep, that's the raised floor industry. Yep.
Okay, so Tate is creating these raised floors for those types of.
Yep, manufacturing certain finishes of the tiles and the certain heights, the pedestals that they sit on. Because the advantage, this is my sales rep now, the advantage of it is that you can lay down and like change where power outlets go, et cetera, et cetera. It's easier than like ripping out a normal floor, if that makes sense. So it kind of makes buildings a little more like modular. It's pretty cool, actually.
I think before you were with Tate, you were doing a lot of this freelance work.
Yep. Yeah, that was a roller coaster.
Okay, you were working on different types of projects. Would you say that the freelance work was more of like the 3D art type stuff, more of like the sexy 3D design, or was it the same?
So a little bit. Like, so it's so interesting how I got some of the freelance work. I'll post this project, which I'm not like I'm proud of for the challenge, but the final output. So basically, I did this motion graphics. So I applied to this company. Okay, sorry, let me take a step back. The time that I got laid off from Compulse, where like I was looking for a job, so in between me going from Compulse to Tate, I freelanced for this company called Balto. I freelanced for uh, Imaginative, and I also freelanced for, man, talk about career goals. Oh my gosh. This is probably the most humbling freelance job I got, which was this company called Mode Lab. I will say, now that I'm looking back on this, two of these freelance jobs actually came from not even getting the job that I applied to. So I applied to jobs at these companies, and either I pushed hard enough on the design test, or they were just happy, like interested in my work, that they still like paid me for like part-time work basically. Um, so also then Imaginative, which was an interesting one. Um,
Well, let me ask you this. When you were freelancing, like what are some of the things that you learned that you weren't aware of before you had began?
oh man, so much. I mean, man, oh man, the Balto AI one was like 2 to 3 months of how long is this video? It's 32 seconds. So, man, like that's such an interesting thing. So this company called Studio Tendril, I watched a video of the CEO and it's actually on Adobe, I believe. But he had showed his whole workflow of how he basically like works with someone like Microsoft to make like a 30-second to 60-second motion graphics ad. And I tried doing that with this freelance job where basically Balto was going to they needed a video for oh my gosh, what's it, like a convention? Yeah, like a trade show. And they were trying to loop a video there, and they contracted me for that video. So yeah, it was so much learning. I mean, I tried to incorporate like UI UX, so I was importing SVG files, which is like some of the like web components of their website into 3D, trying to make it look good, do like animate the cameras. Honestly, a lot of 3D motion graphics too is like knowledge of like directing, like film directing, like pacing, match cuts. Um, so man, that was I will have to say I think that project was the most not silly thing for me to try to strive to achieve, to be like, man, I can go get Studio Tendril quality on my first motion graphics project by myself. Which is just um what is it, naive, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Because yeah, so I mean that was such a good learning experience. The Mode Lab place, um I actually it's an NDA project. I'm really upset that it's a project that I can't even like show I did any work for, because that company's insane. Um, and I would love to work there. That's definitely my career goal, is they had like just a job listing there. But anyways,
All right, let's go back to that other project that you were talking about where you were trying to be the best that you can be. How did the project turn out? I mean, did you achieve, I mean, what you were after, or was it like a horrible like collapse?
yeah, no, I mean I achieved a project that I finished, but no, I think they actually they paid someone else for the video that they used at the booth.
Oh shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, that did not pull through.
Well, how do you bounce back from something like that? Because like, as creatives, right, we get rejected a lot, like, and we put a lot of time and effort in these things, and sometimes that happens, right? It just falls apart. But like, how do you stay in a positive mindset
Like,
when
yeah,
you're
like
when you're like that?
motivated. Um, I think it's a bit of like, yes, that classical version of failing. Um, but uh, I think it's also just it's about learning and like you need to reflect on it, and like be honest with yourself. Like a company like Studio Tendril or something, which had about the same amount of time that I had to do that project. So I think I had like 2 to 3 months to work on this. Um, and I was trying to make something the quality of in which people have been doing that job for like 5 to 10 years. It's a team of like 20 people.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I think it's a bit like being rational with yourself, but at the same time too, it's like I think I became a little more confident and just willing to learn and push myself by even attempting to do something as like, I guess, difficult as that, especially with it being one of the beginning projects that I was getting paid to do.
How do you effectively communicate these 3D designs? And what's like your approach to project presentation in general? Like, because, there are executives out there, right, who work for some of these big companies. They don't get what we do. And sometimes it's very technical, right? It's very complicated. Like, how do you simplify it? How do you pitch your project and achieve success through it?
Yeah, so I personally try to use this like Studio Tendril approach to how to do like a 3D project. So for example, the longest time so when for example at my job, my manager might request of me a render of like a like a steel metal extrusion, which is ceiling grids. So um and the time consuming part of 3D is well, one of the most time consuming things is the rendering process, and that is rendering the lights hitting your materials that you have and like the environment that you set up in it. um I think the most professional way to actually do it is to show the work grayscale, like not rendered, before you spend the time rendering it, like because it's just faster iteration. um
How long does it take you to iterate on some of these things? Like if like an executive says, "Hey, I want you to do this." What's the turnaround time typically? Or I should say, what's the reasonable turnaround time?
well, for still shots of like the ceiling grids that they sell, um the workflow for that is, luckily I don't have to 3D model stuff. I mean, there are instances where, like we're actually launching this product called Tate Illustra, which I don't know is actually on our website yet, but they have me get all the stuff from the engineers, so the step files that they made in SolidWorks, and then import that into 3D software. But then I have to set it up in the same way, so I have to make sure all the pieces are connected. They're explode like um, actually I'm gonna send Tate Illustra, which I actually just it's on the website. Amazing. So all if you actually click that, you can see all the renders I've done of different angles of this product.
How long did it take to do this?
It's still a still image, something like that, in my opinion. I've gotten fast enough where it's like 2 to 3 days. One day if I'm really gonna push it.
Okay. Yeah, because I wanna stress that to the audience because, 3D designers make it look easy, right? And especially with the explosion of AI stuff, we click a few buttons, boom, it's done. But when you are paying that much attention to detail and that attention to the technical side of things, that takes a while, right? I mean, that takes a lot of you're not just designing, you're getting all the measurements. They have to be precise.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to like I'm asking engineers like scales of things, whether this makes sense, how is this like put in? And then with the Illustra project, it was still getting developed sometimes. So like some of the connectors would possibly change. And sometimes I would have to actually edit 3D models. So it wasn't quite 3D modeling from scratch, but you had to know at least part of 3D modeling to be able to manipulate existing pieces, because luckily the renders aren't dependent on being like completely one-to-one with the real world. Like they need to be convincing enough to the audience or the individual. But like for example, yeah, or like deleting holes out of like bolts, for example. Finding That's the cool thing about being an individual 3D person on my team right now, is I can choose tools that can help me. So there's like a bolt like plugin that I just use to generate different types of bolts, et cetera, et cetera.
And this was like custom built for the company, or is this something that like anybody
No,
can
no, no,
find?
no, no, no. Correct. The latter.
What are the main software tools that 3D designers use? And maybe you can get into the differences between Adobe Substance 3D Collection, Houdini, Blender, basic overview.
I mean, I would say the main players in the game right now would be Cinema 4D, Blender, Houdini, and then something like 3ds Max or like Maya. But I even think those two are kind of like niche, or like used in like, it's interesting how they're all used in different industries. But in my day to day, between Blender, Houdini, Substance Suite, and then like Adobe Creative Suite, some Figma. Yeah,
What do you typically use?
most of the time it's Blender and Houdini, and then Substance Suite is kind of like I think the weird thing to me about software, people expect software to one piece of software to do it all, and that's just not. I don't think sure way about like software or like software development, I guess. So for me, yeah, the Blender and Houdini are like great modeling, animation, lighting, and stuff like that. But then when you want to do material manipulation and make something have, for example, like taking a piece of metal and making rust on it and like scratches and blemishes and like fingerprints to look like they were on the piece of metal, that's where you use Substance Suite, Substance Painter. Substance Painter is basically Photoshop, but just a 3D model. So you literally have brushes that you can be like, oh, I want a dust brush, or I want grunge. Like I want it to look like this wrench was, 50 years old and was sitting in like an unused barn. So that's where like the icing on that cake comes in. Substance Designer is so crazy. It's just like a node. That's where I think a lot of 3D is super interesting, because you use node networks to like make in design, in Substance Designer, which is what everything in the Substance Suite is actually based on, is a node network where like if you wanted to make a wooden plank floor material, it's a whole network of nodes and shapes, and manipulation of that stuff to then be exported to something like Blender, Houdini, Cinema 4D to make something look so realistic. But then in Designer, you have the modularity to change things. You're like, oh, I want, this wood to look really chipped away and worn. Well, now you can go back to Designer and make those changes and then bring it back into Blender or Houdini or whatever I'm using. I've also been using a bit of Stager and Sampler. Sampler is insane. They have an AI tool where you can take a picture of like anything in the world. So like let's say you wanted this, you were so awe-inspired by the road that you were walking on recently, and you can take a picture of it, bring it into Substance Sampler, and then Substance Sampler converts that image into the the maps, the texture maps that create a 3D material, and then you bring that into something like Blender or something like that. So it looks like you've taken like the real world and brought it into a texture in 3D, if that makes sense. So I think that's an example of something where like AI just accelerates and also opens your opportunities of like what you can use in that sphere.
I'm sure that those in the audience who are more familiar with it, they'll understand a lot more of what you're talking about. To others who may not have a firm grasp on 3D, right? It's overwhelming, especially as technology just keeps rapidly advancing. I mean, this concept of learning, it truly is a continuous process, but how do you approach that continued learning in 3D design? How do you keep fresh and relevant?
The short answer is I try to make kind of goals and resolutions. And just like with that Balto project, I try to be a little reasonable with myself of like how long something will take for me to like fully grasp. Um, so yeah, I mean each year and kind of I try to focus on just a few of the softwares because and I try to be a master of none. What is that saying? Master of none. Uh,
Yeah, jack of all
yeah.
trades, master of none.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. um, that's kind of how I approach it, but I try to focus my time on a certain one. I'm not trying to jump around um, all too often, and that might be a span of like 3 months. And with Houdini, with Houdini, it's kind of a lifelong thing. I've decided. I'm like, it's just so much depth in it, and so much like coding and like technical area where it meets art. And I think it's the coolest thing, and that's kind of what excites me. Um, that's the same how I feel with the Substance Designer too. It's so much knowledge and so many nodes and so many like variables. So I try to be reasonable.
Yeah, it's very technical.
Yep. Um, but then but then there's like on top of that, if you're trying to work for something like Studio Tendril, your brain's kind of like, man, they have the best material artists. They have the best lighters. They have the best directors. Like those motion graphics studios have like art directors and like directors of like match cuts and stuff like that where like when it transitions from like I don't know, a football helmet to a I don't know, like just to a different object in the scene, like the grass, it feels like a smooth transition. It's not like, whoa, what just happened? Like, you know. So it is very overwhelming in that regard, right? Because directing and lighting and making sure your 3D materials look stunning and good is totally separate from like learning substance designer and learning like the cool new thing in Houdini that you can spend like forever on. So I mean I'm not gonna lie, like I struggle with that. But I think that it's good to like I think if you're gonna get into this industry, you need to like work at a job, but then also be interested enough to like push personal projects and like keep learning the new um, softwares. And I think it will reward you over time. Things like Unreal Engine and stuff like that, I think are just going to become more and more prevalent as we get into the world of like augmented reality and stuff like that.
Let's touch on that augmented reality because as you know, or maybe some of the audience doesn't know yet, Apple Vision Pro is here. How will this type of augmented reality change things for us in the near future? How will it change for you?
I think that a few times that I've noticed, I'm like, wow, I can't believe this is here type of thing. Like I feel like I'm in the future, but it is the present. Is I went to see Harry Potter on Broadway a year ago, I believe. And in the intermission, they basically just had a bunch of QR codes to like scan kind of just like 3D overlays of like, the critters or like the golden snitch like flying in the room with you as you're like moving your phone around to kind of make like an interactive environment. Um, It's kind of like Pokemon, kind of an extension of like Pokemon Go. I think Pokemon Go is literally the biggest example of augmented reality that has affected everyone.
Let's take where you're at now at Tate, right? Where you have
Hmm.
those diagrams and those floor plans and everything there, those illustrations. Do you think at some point they would use augmented reality to kind of like put you into that floor space so that you can see where you are before you commit to a particular project?
So not only that, with Sketch, so there's a thing called Sketchfab where you can basically take like the exploded view 3D model of your, let's say floor like panel that has screws in it, and the floor panel is made of like multiple layers. We've already started uploading those models to something like Sketchfab or Adobe Aero or Meta's Spark AR also does that, where people now maybe at our trade show can scan that QR code, and then if you've ever been on Amazon and like looked at maybe a couch and you're trying to project that into your room, has a similar type of functionality. And we're even trying to animate it. At my job right now too, there's even aspirations to create a VR experience where you basically go into this like 3D room with all of our products in one room. Like almost like a virtual trade show. So you go, instead of you having to go, you live in Texas and this company has all their products and stuff in New York. Well, if I go to a trade show, their goal is to literally bring an Oculus or some type of headset and have the person sit down and like experience that. It's
Wow.
pretty
Wow.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you are new to the Adobe Creative Career Discord, I just want to take some time to share one of the coolest things we have going on here, and that would be the mentorship program. On the server, there are a bunch of incredible mentors specializing in all different creative fields, from graphic design to motion design to video, illustration, photography, creative writing, and so much more. And they are just waiting for you to connect with them. So here's how to access that list. Hop on over to the Adobe Creative Career Discord and look for the mentorship category. Under that section, there's a channel called Find a Mentor. Within that space, there are bios for everyone and what they specialize in. And if you can't access that mentorship category, well, hop on over to server info, click on choose a role, and select mentorship under the opt-in categories listed right there. So let's talk about, people who may have a traditional graphic design or perhaps illustrators who are out there who are looking to make the leap into 3D. What advice do you have for them? Where do they begin without getting overwhelmed with all this, the technicality of it all?
Yeah, I would actually emphasize using a few of the like, I think they're called substance evangelists and evangelists. Sorry. And they have fantastic stuff that I think translates much more from the realm of like, okay, all I've really done is use Photoshop and Illustrator, and I'm really scared to like I said, how I think photography of like lipsticks or boxes or whatever the package designing that you're trying to do will be replaced by something like you make all the labels and stuff in Photoshop and Illustrator. And actually in Illustrator, you can take some of your vectors and make them 3D and then import them into something like Stager. But yeah, I think that the workflow, if you watch a few of those people like Anna Natter, I'm also posting some of these people, but if you watch some of that and consume some of it and then start making personal projects that you think would make a lot of sense to the places that you're applying, like a marketing firm, and they see that you've done this package design with Photoshop, Illustrator, Substance Stager, maybe some Painter, and they're like, wow, like I'm floored. And I think that the possibilities with that are pretty endless. Like so many companies I think are going to be doing that.
Hmm. So sort of like these hybrid positions where somebody isn't
Hmm.
just a traditional graphic designer, they have illustration skills, they have 3D skills. Yeah, and we're kind of seeing that right today with like a lot of hybrid positions with graphic design and web design, or graphic design and video editing. We see a lot of these crossover.
I also think that so many companies are going to start thinking to themselves, why am I paying outsourcing 3D work? I mean, that's literally my job. Is I think that they were outsourcing the work, the 3D work so much that they that hiring me would actually save them money.
Oh,
So
okay. Interesting. Well, let me ask you this. Before you started there, was the job actually posted, or did you kind of like maneuver
it
your way in?
was posted. No, 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 it was posted.
It was posted. Okay. So they were looking for
Yes.
that, but it's a relatively new position that they were looking for.
Yes. Yes.
Ah, interesting. So, to those of you who are listening who might be frustrated because you're not finding jobs, do not be dismayed, because it's these companies are trying to figure it out as they're going along as well.
Just a quick addendum. Michael Tanzio, he, I think he just got hired by Adobe, maybe like a year or two ago, and his tutorials, I think, from like coming from just Adobe Suite and wanting to jump into um, the 3D packages is fantastic. And I think too that like in your portfolio, as I mentioned before, getting this job, I wouldn't have had it without product renders, because they don't just want like cool abstract 3D stuff. And so I think that like when you are trying to transition and like add it to your tool belt and your portfolio, you want to be thinking a little more in that way.
Ah, okay. All right. So product renders, that's key in the portfolio.
I think so, especially for something like my job where it's like it's so steady, the workflow's so steady, and it's not something that I see them not needing. um where like doing, I think, the abstract work is, there's a much, I personally think there's a higher ladder to climb,
Okay.
if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And folks, for those of you who are listening, when Kyle's talking about abstract work, he's talking about, the more artistic stuff, the stuff that doesn't really, it looks really cool, but it may not necessarily serve a purpose. Is that accurate, Kyle?
So I agree with that generally. Um, but something like an XK Studio Tendril, like they're making money, and that's the cool thing, I think, is they take abstract and combine it with product. It's pretty crazy.
Okay. Yeah, because like when I'm on the XK Studio Behance here,
Yes,
let's say
that is
that.
goals. I'm in awe with that place.
Okay. Like this third project, Matthew Wilcock, it says out. Um,
Hmm.
this when you click on the project, it's a large scale audiovisual installation,
Oh yeah, yep.
right?
That's a
But
great example.
okay, yeah, because it's abstract, it's artistic, but it was
Hmm.
something that they found a way to purpose and to put it into a song, right?
Yeah,
So it's like a
and I
music
love
video.
that.
So yeah, folks, if you're creating these abstract designs and you really enjoy doing it, think a little bit creatively, right? Like, how can I repurpose this piece of art for something that serves a more functional purpose? And maybe then you can find that sweet spot where you get paid for it for some of these cool killer designs that you're coming up with and these art pieces, right?
Yeah, look, and I mean, okay, let's talk more like the world of AR. Would you consider the stuff in Times Square AR? Like those side, um, have you seen those side panel shots? I
Uh-huh.
actually just posted so the XK actually got contracted by, I think, like some town in Sweden, or sorry, yeah, no, no, in Sweden, to do one of those like side panels. I don't, like a 3D, I don't know what the actual term is.
Yeah, they like go around they like wrap around the building, right?
Yes, they wrap around the building, so they create an illusion, yeah, of like AR almost.
Yeah, but these, like the one that you posted here, this link, this is just essentially an art piece, but yet they're
Yes.
getting paid to create this.
Hmm.
which is really interesting. So there is a
Yeah.
need for it. We just have to find those people who have the bank accounts who are gonna pay us for that need, right? That's the trick. Um, but we mentioned AI a little bit, and I just want to be mindful of time because we only have about 12 minutes here. But let's do the integration of AI in 3D design. Have you explored or utilized any of the various AI tools in your work, or do you stay away from it and think, "Oh no, this is going to replace what I do"?
Well, sampler I've played with where you, as I mentioned, you take a picture of like, I want this to be a 3D texture, like I would like this wall, and you bring it into that. I have experimented with it. I actually used it in Tate. I so they had tiles that had carpet. But the carpet texture. And basically, I had to display that carpet in 3D, and I took that carpet texture image that I found on the internet, dragged that into sampler, and then exported it into Blender where I was rendering my 3D scene. Um, and yeah, like that just excites me. Like it makes my life easier. I'm a one man shop, like so uh I don't have time. Like it saves time.
So you're not necessarily afraid of AI.
No, no, I'm embracing it. I actually start my gosh, I tried this thing called Vexember, which is in Houdini. It's Vex is like the coding language. And they had like a 24-day challenge of like they showed this cool graphic and you had to code you had to use the least amount of nodes to make the effect. And it was a whole Discord group, et cetera, et cetera. And I used ChatGPT. I like described like what was going on, and I used that code. It got me like halfway there. Um, and like I think it's an interesting paradigm. I think that I should be analyzing that code and realize that that doesn't mean that I know how to get it from scratch still, and that's still like a um, knowledge gap that I still need to fill, because I don't think that we should put our hands up and be like, oh well, I still don't have to learn it. Like, no, I don't think that's true.
So you used it as like a tool in your arsenal
Yes,
of tools. Okay.
yes.
You can learn more about tonight's guest, Kyle Jamison, on his Behance, which I posted in the show chat, and I'm going to post it again along with a bunch of other links here. And for those of you listening on demand, this will be in the show notes. But Kyle is on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Let's go to your YouTube, Kyle, because you shared a lot of what other people are doing, but you're doing some
Yeah,
stuff too. And one of
yeah.
those
Thanks.
things is you have a YouTube channel, and in there, I'm going to post this in the show chat here. You have a video, Elementary 3D Literacy in Adobe Substance Suite
Oh
with
yeah,
Kyle
yeah.
Jamison. What is
Yes, I
this?
do.
Is this a beginner's guide?
Yeah, that's I suppose I can call that a yes, it is. And I suppose I can call that my first kind of like, I don't know if I can call it a conference, a digital conference, digital conference stream. That was definitely one of the coolest moments of my life for sure, or at least design life.
Right, because this is for people just getting started in 3D. So check it out. We covered a lot of technical stuff, but right here, Kyle breaks it down.
I feel like I would just be able to compress, or like if you watched it and you didn't understand certain parts, I'd be able to get through it. Man, that was so much preparation. I was so
Yeah, it was.
nervous.
Yeah, but look, you aced it. You got a lot of knowledge, and that's what I like about you. You have a ton of knowledge that we're not going to get into this hour. And I know we're going all over the map here, but strike up a conversation with this guy, everybody, Kyle Jamison. Send him a DM through Discord. He has the moniker that he uses. It's a Wallaby 8. And I have to ask because I love learning the deeper meaning behind people's screen names. And you use this in all your stuff. Where did
Yes,
Wallaby 8
even my
originate?
email.
Yep. Where did it
Which is kind
originate?
of funny because I even realized I'm like, man, some people just have like their initial or like first name and last. It sounds so much more professional. Wallaby, so the eight's just my favorite number. It's kind of just a man, you write like or those types of books, but like just a I'm really brain farting on the word that it is, but just like a thing that I believe in. For some reason, that's just my lucky number. Like it comes up in my life a lot. A
Oh,
superstition, I think, is something.
oh,
But
interesting.
the wallaby term just came from I had this friend that lived in my block, and I think we played tag, but we gave ourselves monikers of wallaby versus like flamingo or something, or some other animal. I think it was a flamingo. And then people started calling me that in elementary school. And then it just became my AIM name. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that when that was big. And then it became my email. And then it just kind of went into like every other social or whatever you need a username for it. And then my struggle in college too, I think stemmed from I wanted to be like an electronic musician. Um, and that was also my name. Wallaby was like my DJ name.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. So you were a DJ?
Yes, yeah. I probably did like probably did like 5 DJ sets that were probably like an hour to 2 hours in length. I got paid for like two of them, I think, and I produced. I was pretty like on SoundCloud, made some songs. I always loved I like music. I feel like is just another, yeah, it's a massive interest of mine as well. But it's definitely been on the back burner, and I feel like that's kind of a thing that like I've accepted. Like I just like want to put it down for now. But with actually design and like motion graphics, it's actually a pretty important thing um, to incorporate.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about a little bit about that because that kind of gets into sound design.
Yes. I mean, I just was so fascinated with it. Like I got into like some I've always just loved like just crazy like different music like metal and then I got into electronic music with I think man, this is like middle school me coming out. I would spend my summers I would spend my summers listening to this band called Of Mice and Men, Black Sabbath, and Skrillex and playing Red Dead Redemption, which is an amazing game. But yeah, I think Skrillex got me really into like that type of music. And then I got into this group called Cone Sound, which I actually considered getting a tattoo of, the cone symbol, which is kind of like a Zen Buddhism ideology. And yeah, I just got into it. Like, I mean, I wanted to make music. I worked for a company called MA Music. That was my first internship, actually, using some Adobe stuff, making audio visualizers and stuff like that. But sound design wise, I'm just fascinated with music, and electronic stuff is just very prevalent right now. Synthesizers. If you've ever seen a modular synth, I actually think there's a ton of similarities with like taking the wires and like plugging them in to like arpeggiate something because this thing's in this type of sequence, and um, it's actually pretty similar to like node networks in 3D work. Um, so I think there's an interesting parallel there.
When I was looking at your Behance, I saw a lot of interesting designs, a lot of interesting artwork there. And knowing your music background now, it kind of reminds me, and hopefully you're a fan. If you're not, forgive me. But Trent Reznor.
Yeah, yeah, I know him. Yes, I would say so I've actually tried to get into Nine Inch Nails. I like their bigger songs, and I've tried listening to some of his soundtracks. I mean, he's an incredible like sound designer. I think I need to try again. Um, like give him another really big effort.
Well, the reason I bring up his name is because, in the early 2000s and maybe even yeah, around the early 2000s, he was working with a graphic designer named David Carson. And David Carson used um, these kind of like this distress type of style to a lot of the designs that they were using on the covers for the Nine Inch Nails albums. And it was, it was all flat, obviously, because it's, printed artwork, but it kind of reminded me, it had that 3D quality to it and it kind of like that uniqueness. But, David Carson, he's a different type of designer. Some people don't really like his work because it's so disjointed. It's so all over the place, but it's kind of like that organized chaos that fit in well with Trent Reznor's style. And kind of when I look at your style, it kind of has a similar approach. It has that, dare I say, that organized chaos.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think I actually just like that in all I don't mean to sound cheesy with this, but I think I like that in like art and design. There's like so much music. I remember playing like Rock Band and playing like really heavy metal music on it, and I'm like, man, like how do people listen to this? And then 10 years later, I'm listening to it because on the face value, it might not be super appealing and pretty, but when you start kind of like looking in a little further and like trying again and again, it really sticks with you. Um, I don't know. That's something I think about these days.
Yeah, that's really really profound, and we'll have to end it there because we are out of time. And that about wraps it up for this episode of Adobe Spotlight Sessions. But I'd like to thank my guest, Kyle Jamison, for taking the time to join us tonight and discuss his incredible career journey and what he's learned along the way. Please, please, please be sure to connect with him on Discord, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, but perhaps the easiest, over at his Behance. And if you enjoyed this program, catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight sessions and all the great content here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events at the top of the server. That way you can see what's coming next. So thank you to everyone out there who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth, aka JBam. You can always find me on Discord, LinkedIn, or on my website, justinbamforth.com. And until next time, everyone, take care and keep creating.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. This gave me a bolt of inspiration and thoughts. So I'm very thankful.
Yeah, no, this is the great conversation. So that's it, everybody. Go home, go to bed, eat breakfast, whatever whatever you're gonna do next. And thanks for tuning in.
Yep. Bye, everyone. Don't be a stranger.
For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career.